The beautiful should die young, and everyone else should live as long as possible. Yukio Mishima.
There's this old Greek tale that tells us how Achilles was forced to choose between a long life void of any glory or a glorious young death. Without flinching, he chose the latter. I touched on this subject matter slightly in my previous video, but Yukio puts it a little bit more eloquently. Each of us secretly hopes that our life story will be immortalized in art or song. For Alexander the Great, it was stone. He obsessed about this to the extent that the man ordered all statues to be made in only the likeness of his 21-year-old self. He died just after rounding 30, but if things had gone differently and he had lasted, let's say, until 50 or 70, the discrepancy between the images left by his sculptors and the old man who would have left the earth would have been the equivalent to a modern-day catfish. Unfortunately, the gifted dying young is still something that happens today. Artists nowadays are dropping like flies left and right. And honestly, we'd be blowing up their shit even more when they die. Because after someone dies, that's when we decide it's time to appreciate them. Pac, MJ, X, Bruce Lee, Paul Walker, Ledger, Cobain. I could sit here all day. There is something absolutely horrifying, yet at the same time, sinisterly beautiful about the death of a young individual. One whose potential is never met, whose dreams are never actualized, and who dies with their youthful spirit untainted. I believe this to the extent that I think the death of a young adult actually has a heavier weight to it than that of a child. And this is probably an unpopular opinion, but before you click away, hear me out. The child leaves almost nothing behind. It's tragic for the family, yeah, but at the same time, the child hasn't brought anything of value to the world yet, and oftentimes, children are oblivious to their circumstances. On the other hand, a young adult leaves friends, sometimes a companion, children, unfinished art or work, fans, etc. They had something to live for, absolute lucidity on the matter, and a half-fulfilled life that they'll never be able to put a satisfying ending to, good or bad. Now, I'm not saying children deserve to die more than young adults. I'm not a complete idiot, but generally speaking, I think that the death of a person who has already lived half a life and leaves it all behind is sadder than just a kid who has or very little conscious of what's happening, and most of the time does not have something to live for other than the only fact of living. A couple years ago, there was this huge controversy regarding X and how he was a known girlfriend beater, and I get it, you know, like, you don't want to fund a psycho who hits women by listening to their music, right? But if we actually take a step back and look, there's a bunch of them out there. There's NBA Youngboy, Trippie Redd, Gucci Mane, Dr. Dre. These guys are all accused of hitting their girlfriends, yet somehow the public seems to care less about them. But you gotta separate the art from the artist. And I agree with that to a certain extent, but one of the reasons so many people love John Lennon is because of how he openly admitted to beating and emotionally abusing his wife. He reflected on his actions, he tried to make amends, and he became the advocate of peace that we love him for today. Which is sad because regardless of whether or not the accusations were true or false, I feel like X was on that path of redemption with the message he was trying to send. I miss him.
Hey guys. How are you? I just really wanted to tell you guys that it does not matter what your dream is or what your goal is. You make sure that it is your prime priority to follow what you believe is good for you. Do not live your life trying to impress someone else, and do not live your life trying to be someone you're not, and do not live your life making yourself miserable just to amount to someone else's idealism. We need people to ideally take care of the world. We need good mothers. We need good fathers. We need people with sources of knowledge. Let's make it not cool to be stupid. Let's make it cool to be a good person. I'm tired of it being cool to be a fucking murderer or a shooter or just this irrelevant being. Like, that shit is stupid.